Well, we want to first say that it was a great morning to get up and start the day's work knowing that the President has essentially said to us, get your work done in Congress. And I think in our Democratic caucus meeting, which just concluded here in the House of Representatives, we are ready to get things done. We had an extensive conversation on the deadline that we face to get a good budget in order that deals with our deficits but makes the investments the President announced yesterday. We talked about the need to keep our children, our neighbors, our family members safe from gun violence, and how our task force in the House of Representatives is ready with recommendations that we hope will have a chance to put on the floor for a vote. As the President said, let us vote. And we're ready for all the issues that we have to tackle, including immigration reform. This morning, Democrats, I believe, in the House of Representatives are sending a very strong signal to the President, to our colleagues in the House and in the Senate, that we're ready to get things done. We recognize that the dysfunction that ruled over the last 2 years, where we saw more shutdowns of government, failure to pay our national debts on time, were all threatened and took us to the edge, to the precipice on more than one occasion, that the American people spoke very loudly about that type of governing and said, no más, no more. And so I believe House Democrats are ready to get the work done and to do this in a way that, as the President said, may cause some disagreement, but it shouldn't cause dysfunction. We are ready to work because we know the most important thing we can do is tell America that we're all about helping our private sector, our small businessmen and women, create those jobs that put Americans to work. And if Americans are working, the economy's churning. If the economy's churning, America's back where it should be. And so we're ready. And we want the world to know that House Democrats are ready to get the job done. With that, let me now ask our Vice Chair, Joe Crowley, to speak, and then after that we will have Mike Thompson, the Chair of the Task Force on Preventing Gun Violence, and our Vice Chair, Carolyn McCarthy, on the same task force, to tell us a few things as well. Joe.
Thanks, Javier, and I'm anxious to hear. I think everyone is from the Chair of the Task Force on the product that he and the Task Force have created. So I'll be brief. I just want to say I agree with Javier that yesterday's speech was, I think, very inspiring, and I think, as I think many of my colleagues have said, we are fired up and we are ready to go. We had all of 6 voting days in January. My hope is that our work product will be much more robust in the months to come, and we need to find time to solve the issues that our country is facing. The President repeatedly said over and over again that the American people deserve votes on the issues that we are confronted with. We owe it to the victims of Sandy Hook, as well as the Aurora incident, what happened in Wisconsin, and what's happening every day on the streets of inner cities like New York, Chicago, L.A., and elsewhere, where too many people are dying from gun violence. The President said the American people don't expect us to get it perfect. We're not going to get it perfect, but that ought not stop us from doing something to change the course of this issue in our country. So I was very proud of our President last night. Once again, what he's calling for is for this Congress to have a vote on behalf of the American people. And with that, I'll just turn it now to the Chair of the Task Force on Gun Safety, Mike Thompson.
Well, thank you very much. I was inspired also last night. As a matter of fact, I thought we should have gone to a vote on those issues right there. Everybody was there, and especially with sequestration coming, but instead we're going to go on a vacation. And that's not right. We should be staying here and we should be working. Both of you are absolutely correct. I am the chair of the Task Force on Preventing Gun Violence, and we put forward last week 15 principles against which we believe all legislation dealing with the prevention of gun violence should be measured. These principles can help develop legislation, and they can help us analyze and review proposed legislation. These principles, if used correctly, will lead us to legislation that will in fact prevent gun violence. And we need to get going on this. Some of these issues that we pointed out are measures. They're, for lack of a better term, low-hanging fruit. Those are issues that we should do right now while we continue to evaluate the issue of gun violence. 32 people a day die from gunshots, and this is something that we have an opportunity to intervene in. We have an opportunity to make our communities, our schools, our workplaces, and the place in which we recreate safer, and the failure to do that is a terrible letdown to the American people, the people who send us to Washington and entrust us with helping them live safer, more productive lives. So I'm honored to be able to chair this task force and look forward to continuing to work to pass legislation quickly that will help reduce gun violence.
Carolyn McCarthy.
Thank you, and it's been a pleasure working with Mr. Thompson all this time, and certainly with the rest of my colleagues. I will say to you, I've been fighting for reducing gun violence now for, I keep saying 16 years, but I'm not counting the years that I was doing it before I came to Congress. So it's actually almost 20 years now that I've been doing this. But this is the first time I've been encouraged that we can get something done. And I certainly hear all the negative things out there, but working here in Washington, even when something positive is going forward, you kind of always feel the pushback. As Gabby Giffords said, it's going to be hard. And it will be hard. But I do believe colleagues on both sides of the aisle are going to be able to do common sense legislation that can save lives. And as Mike has said, yes, we need certainly comprehensive background checks. We also can get rid of, I heard some people saying, well, these assault weapons don't matter. But you know what? When you think about if we stop the straw purchases and we stop the gun show loopholes and people buying and selling illegal guns, those could stop the daily shootings that we see in our communities, and not just the urban areas, but also the suburban areas. If people started looking what's happening in the suburban areas, you see that there are shootings going on there. I believe we can get something done. I believe that if we can work together, that this is something the American people want. This is not something that we as Democrats have been out there in your face about. It's just that many of us are really, really tired about seeing these killings on a daily basis. When they say that large magazines are not going to stop an awful lot of those deaths, let me tell you something. What we've seen, which can happen in less than a minute, taking down more and more people. We can stop that. We can stop that. And as far as I believe it has to be comprehensive, I happen to believe, I'm a nurse. I happen to believe that we need to look at mental health. I'm going to be the ranking member on early education, and I think that's when we should start on looking at what can we do for our young people to make sure they don't go into the world of gangs. I also believe that we and the teachers, to be very honest with you, can pick out those kids that need some extra help. And the parents. I mean, parents pick these things up, but they don't know where to go. And I think that we have the opportunity to really, really make a difference for the future, for the safety of our children in our schools, but for the safety of our community. So I'm looking forward to work with leadership on both sides of the aisle to get something done, something common sense that can save lives in the end. Thank you.
So you heard two words over and over, common sense and vote. We don't have to do extreme things. We don't have to do ideological things. We can just do what most Americans would say is basic common sense, whether it's on gun violence, on immigration, or our budget and fiscal priorities, and vote. Let's do what we're elected to do, vote. Don't hold things up because you don't like them ideologically. Don't sequester the Violence Against Women Act because you don't like it. Give us a vote. Don't stop the nomination or confirmation of a cabinet secretary because you don't like the person. vote. And so if we're going to fulfill our obligations as members of Congress, House and Senate, let's vote. Let's vote and get things done, and let's do them in ways that clearly people would say are filled with common sense. With that, take questions. Yes.
Isn't that you say just vote with common sense, especially on these big controversial issues like firearms and immigration? But isn't that the problem for some of the members on the margins in your caucus who, just taking a vote, either it's not going to help advocate for the plan, whatever the plan on either of these issues are, or if they do vote to push it, that could potentially jeopardize them. It doesn't align with their district, doesn't align with their reelection.
We're a big tent party, obviously, and we have members who cross all parts of the spectrum when it comes to whatever the political position might be and the policy position might be. But I think every one of our members would tell you, put a bill up on the floor, put the issue up for a vote. We may not vote with Democrats, or maybe we're going to vote with Republicans, but I think most of our members, if not every single one of our members, would say, give us a vote. Give the American public a vote. Don't stifle progress simply because you don't like the way the bill looks or the issue sounds. Give people a chance to vote, and then let's decide. We have a choice in this country, freedom of choice here to decide yes, no, or present. And so let's vote.
Mr. Becerra, you said in the caucus meeting you discussed the Democratic budget proposal. Have you decided yet if it will ever balance for any year that it covers?
We are moving forward, and under Chris Van Hollen's leadership, we are presenting, as he has been for weeks now, talking about a way to have smart deficit reduction in a way that not only does what the sequester is supposed to do, which is to help bring down the deficits, but in a way that also lets us invest the way the President spoke about making sure that we're keeping our roads and highways moving, that our schools are being built, that we're not firing cops and teachers and firefighters. And so we believe that in the Senate will propose something very similar to what the House is talking about, which is to continue to have deficit reduction, which builds on what the President mentioned, which was over $2.5 trillion of deficit reduction, which has already been done, but do it in a smart way, not in a Neanderthal way, which harms a lot of very important investments, whether it's National Institute of Health and all our health research, whether it's investments in our children in our schools, or whether it's making sure that we continue to have the best equipped, best trained fighting force in the world. Yeah.
Congressman, I wanted to ask, when there's definitely a bipartisan solution coming about in the House on immigration, how involved should the President be when it comes to immigration reform? Is it better that he remains kind of hands-off and just is willing to sign a bill, or do you need him to be more engaged on that?
I don't think the President will be hands-off on immigration for any moment in time. He was the first national leader to start talking about the need to do a full fix of our broken immigration system back in 2007 when he first ran for office. And he's continued that drumbeat. And he's gone beyond just talking. He's actually proposed ways to fix the system. He hasn't presented a bill yet, but I bet if you were to ask him, would he be prepared to submit a bill if Congress isn't ready real soon, he would tell you, I have no doubt, I can do it in a heartbeat. Because he has worked all these issues. He has. Some of us have met with him in the White House. He has come, obviously, and talked to us here in Congress. He's made it very clear. He knows what it takes to fix the broken immigration system. He's ready to give us. Well, he's given us those ideas, and he's ready to move forward if we're not. And as you saw last year, when he took several executive actions that did not need a legislative bill to enact, I think the President will move forward where he can if Congress doesn't act, because our system is just too broken, and the American people want it fixed now.
How recently have you been meeting with him at the White House on immigration, or have members been meeting with him?
Some of us met with him a little bit more than a week ago in the White House, and previous to that, about a week or two before that, we had met with his all of his executive team that was working on immigration. So he's very engaged, and as I said to you, they essentially know what a bill would look like that they would want to have passed. And they have communicated that to both House and Senate members bipartisanly, what they believe would be a good fix. But they're giving Congress a chance to work its will to move this. But as I said, I don't think he's going to wait too long. let's get this done, as he keeps saying. And on immigration, he's made it very clear he wants to get this done.
Let me just, if I could add to that. The president's been the drum major here. He's not just beating the drum, he's actually the drum major. He's leading on this issue. And he dedicated a sizable portion of his speech last night to the issue of immigration reform, where he laid out a vision, once again. So when Javier Becerra or Joe Crowley or any of us speaks about immigration reform, it's more to a limited audience, as much as we'd like to think the world is listening to us. When the president speaks about it, the entire country in the world is listening to what he has to say about that. And I would say that in the president's speech last night, he said nothing that's inconsistent with what has been the vision of Javier Becerra, of Joe Crowley, of all of us within our caucus. And I dare say that this is an issue, if I can just use an example, both Democrats and Republicans seemed to stand up for that issue yesterday, finally. So it seems, as you say, there is bipartisan support. The president's laying out the foundation, and what he has said is it's up to Congress to act. There are limitations as to what he can do with executive order, but he did say if Congress continued to fail to act, that he would take steps and measures to enact common sense executive orders to move this country forward.
The reality is now that you're not doing anything on sequester this week. You're off next week. Then there's, the deadline is March 1st. Are you expecting or are you preparing to have to deal with the realities that the sequester may, in fact, just kick in?
Democrats aren't waiting for the sequester, the deadline to hit. In fact, today when we have on the floor, or tomorrow when we have on the floor another bill that really doesn't deal with much and is another gimmick on the House floor, we are prepared to present an amendment that would deal with the sequester, with these deadlines, because we think that's what really Congress should be doing. And rather than taking off next week, packing up and leaving Congress just 2 weeks before these deadlines hit, we think we should stay. And Democratic leader Nancy Pelosi has essentially said that to the Speaker, Mr. Boehner, that House of Representative members should not leave town next week if we haven't dealt with the sequester. And so we're ready to take care of this. We have actually proposed an alternative with the same level of deficit reduction, but with smart, targeted cuts, and still allowing for the investments in those things that we think are very important as Americans: health research, our children, public safety, leaving those things intact. And so we're ready to go. We don't see why we have to take a week off when we've got a deadline facing us that's, again, artificially placed there and manufactured, as the president said. We can deal with these things, and Democrats are ready to do it. We're not interested in leaving town without having done this.
Would you expect the solution to be passed before the March 1st deadline,
Well,
considering the timeline that's being presented to you?
It's hard to see how we get things done before this deadline hits if House Republican leadership is telling members in the House, you get to go home next week and not be around. It sure forces the issue once again, as I said before, this dysfunction where we do things ad hoc. We do them last moment. As the president said, and I've been saying this for years, no small businessman or woman in America would run his or her business this way. Is there any reason to believe that the largest economy in the world should be run this way? We're not in control of the House of Representatives. We don't control the agenda or the schedule. But if it were up to Democrats, we would stay in town and get our work done.
Let me just add to that just for a moment. The American people are tired of the artificial crises that have been created over and over again. They want solutions. They don't want to hear about we're pushing things off. It was mentioned at the caucus retreat last week that Mr. Boehner says that he doesn't want to kick the can down the road anymore. Well, stop kicking the can down the road. We join him in his frustration with his caucus that wants to continually create new crises and new fiscal cliffs and new cliffs in general. The American people are tired of it. All they hear about is crises, 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 constantly here in Washington. Why don't we find some solutions and give the American people peace of mind? Give the businesses of this country some peace of mind instead of continuing to create additional crises.
One last question, is there one?
I was going to ask,
Chad?
I asked one going to be ready to go this week. That they might introduce it, but they don't intend to vote on that this week. Isn't that, sort of trump your point saying, well, over here, the House Republicans, they're going away. It looks like the Senate Democrats in the majority will go away next week again.
Since when have you seen the House and the Senate members walk lockstep on issues? There's no reason why the Senate can't act first or the House can't act first. But that's still not an excuse, even if the Senate says that they won't have their bill ready until Friday or Monday of next week. That's no excuse for the House to say, just go home altogether and not stay and work. Obviously, if we're not around, it sure makes it tougher for the House to come up with its own replacement for the sequester. And so I believe the Senate will be prepared to vote on a replacement for the sequester that's smart, that's as ambitious as the sequester when it comes to making savings. And I believe they'll be ready in time to meet the deadline. But it's hard to see how, on a bipartisan basis, the House of Representatives will be able to meet that deadline if House Republican leadership is telling everyone to go home for a week.
Can I just finish one thing, too? I know an awful lot of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle. And we sit down and we talk. Many of us go out to dinner together. And I actually think that sometimes the leadership on the other side of the aisle is afraid to bring up legislation because he doesn't have all the votes to get something passed. And he doesn't want Democrats to be able to be the leading force in passing things, which is really a shame. Because I happen to believe that the Speaker is not that kind of person. I've known him since I got here. He was my chairman on education. He always worked bipartisanly. He always wanted to have a deal. And I can say to you that there are a lot of their members that want to get this done. The problem is he's being held, in my opinion, held hostage by a very large group of some of the newer members. And that's really a shame. Because we have to remember we're here to solve, hopefully, the problems of this country. And right now, the American people, as been said by my colleagues here, people are tired of this. And I have to say, Democrat and Republican congresspeople are tired of these games. We're here to do something. And if things aren't done, from what I hear on the other side of the aisle from, again, my friends for many years, they said, what's the sense of being here? So it's going to be interesting what happens if this continues all the way until next January, February, and see how many retirements we start hearing about. I think that's what's going to be the interesting thing.
Thank you very much.